I got to get my head in Rodney Edmondson's mind right now. So
that'll drive you nuts.
Welcome to Music and Cigars with John and JR. I'm John.
I'm JR.
And today we have Rodney Edmondson with us. Great drummer, honored to call him friend. JR is going to tell you a little bit about him.
All right, so Rodney's been playing for the last however many years.
30 plus.
30 plus years with Grammy Award winning country music legend Ronnie Milsap. Rodney developed his feel and approach to drumming throughout the 1970s with local groups that included many styles from, we were talking about Chicago, and we were talking about some of the other bands that used to cover, because you always had horns, you said.
Yep, but played rock bands also,
right
just
on.
Guitar rock. And
right on. And we're just so thankful to have him here. He's a drumming legend. We just told him that, so it's true. He's been a good friend of John's for a long time. Rodney, It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Good to meet you.
So tell us about your time of, it was Virginia, was it Richmond area?
Not too far from Richmond, about an hour south of there in the what they call the historic triangle, Yorktown, Williamsburg, and Jamestown.
Okay.
Down there, but that's where I grew up and still have a lot of family and friends there.
And that's where you cut your teeth?
Yeah, I went through the school, all the school music programs and elementary school through high school, and marching band, jazz ensemble.
So I got to ask, so are you like a actual musician, unlike me? I mean, you're somebody who can read music and understand
Well,
theories.
I could pretty well back then. As you know, in Nashville, it doesn't always come into play. I had to learn to read charts. But yes, I did. I actually went to college for 1 year, majored in music, thinking I was going to be a band director, and I found out after that first year that's not what I wanted to do. Went to Shenandoah Conservatory of Music for a year and didn't go back. Just picked up playing in local bands and stuff again, and just went from there.
Awesome.
What kind of bands were you playing with? Like, was everything from horn to rock bands to?
Yeah, when I started playing full time, or trying to make a go at it, the club scene back there on the East Coast, it was all horn bands. You had to have horns or you couldn't work. So yeah, we were playing Kool and the Gang and Ohio Players and stuff like that.
You think that's where you learned your laid back groove to learn to?
I think
or
so.
Do you
I
think that was a natural thing, or was that a learned thing?
Well, I think it's an East Coast thing.
Yeah.
I'll relate this one story. I was playing the Opry one night with the Whites. Mm-hmm. And did you ever know Martin Parker?
I did, yes.
I had not met Martin at the time, but we finished, I think he was there that night with Vince Gill, and I finished playing the two songs with the Whites, and there's Martin waiting behind the drums to go up, introduced himself, and he looked at me, and he said, "East Coast." I said, "Yep, East Coast of Virginia." He says, "I knew it. I could hear it."
Oh, wow. That's great. What a great compliment, too.
So it's kind of like every sort of area has a feel, and it's kind of true. I mean, people would talk about the Tulsa feel with Jamie Oldecker and, guys like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, the East Coast was big on that, the whole, what they called beach music, which was a whole different thing than even like Chicago and stuff like that.
Right. So what brought you to Nashville? What made you decide Nashville's where I'm going to be a superstar?
Well, I married Judy in 1979, and I had joined a band that was in Richmond, and it was a horn band, but they were very put together. And after, I don't know, less than 2 years, the band broke up. They had been together a long time, so I managed to destroy that for them. And she told me at that point, she said, "Look, you can kick around in bands, for the rest of your life around here." She said, "But maybe we ought to think about moving somewhere where music is a business." And back then it was New York, LA, and Nashville. and I was not going to New York or LA.
Right.
And so we started making plans to move to Nashville.
I had the same epiphany with my wife. When I decided that I was going to become a full-time recording engineer, at the time, this was in the early 90s, it was either New York, LA, or Nashville. And I grew up in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area. I had no desire to stay there. New York's a great place to visit, get some great food, but I couldn't live there, no way. So I can relate.
Came here with really no real contacts to speak of, other than before we moved out here, I played in a house band. They had a family-owned theater in in Matthews, Virginia, this little place out on the water. But once a month, they would bring out a guest artist from Nashville, and it would be somebody who maybe had just signed a deal, they didn't have a record out yet or something like that. And the last one that we worked with was Lori Morgan.
Oh, wow.
And this was just weeks before I was moving out here. And at the time, she was married to a bass player out here. She says, I'm going to call him and tell him you're coming out to Nashville and to let you sit in. He was playing at the Western Room in Printer's Alley.
Okay.
And she was good on her word. I got out here, and that was the first place I went to. And he said, yeah, Lori told me all about it. We'll get you up to sit in here in a little bit.
That's awesome.
Other than that, I kicked around, trying to, without the aid of the internet, make phone calls and do all that kind of stuff. And finally got into a couple of, club-type bands. The Whites thing came about in '87.
No, so that was before Ronnie Milsap.
Yeah, I did that for 5 years.
Okay, cool.
And y'all know how all the networking thing stuff, all that stuff goes. So I was playing in a really good rock band here in town, a top 40 rock band, and it was a pretty thriving club scene in the area back then. And I met Rosie White, and she used to come out and hear the band all the time and kept telling me, well, we're auditioning drummers if you'd be interested. And I was like, I was enjoying the heavy hitting and
Right.
and everything like that. And I kept putting it off, and she kept coming out, well, we still haven't found anybody. And then I kind of could see the writing on the wall. The clubs were starting to close up. And I just thought, yeah, maybe it might be a good time to make a move on that. And so I went and auditioned for them and got the gig. And
Was it a transition from the Whites to Ronnie? Or,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. And how that came about was while I was playing with the Whites, Jamie Brantley, guitar player, used to come out and hear the rock band all the time when he was in town. And at the time, he was working with Gary Morris. And I met Jamie through that. He was good friends with our bass player. They grew up in Augusta. And so years later, I'm not with the Jeff Allen band anymore, and I'm playing with the Whites, and I'm doing the Opry, and Jamie's there, but he's there with Milsap. He had gotten the Milsap gig, and he was now Ronnie's band leader. And so we just reconnected, didn't think anything of it, and several months after that, I'm out on the road with the Whites, and my wife managed to track me down at a hotel up in Pennsylvania.
Before cell phones.
Right. And she said, Jamie Brantley is desperately trying to get in touch with you. You have got to call him. And so it was a Saturday, and I called Jamie, and he said, man, we need a sub for 6 weeks if you can do it. And I said, yeah. I said, we just have the Opry going on, and they have staff drummers, so I said, yeah, I'd do it. So I got back into town on Sunday. He gave me a book of cassette tapes on Sunday. And we rehearsed on Monday, and I left on Tuesday.
Man.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
and rehearsal was just me and Jamie, the bass player, and one of the keyboard players. So I hadn't hit a note with Ronnie until Wednesday at sound check.
Isn't it crazy how gigs like that happen? I mean, it's just like, you're going along. That's happened to me, and I know it's happened to John too, where you get that phone call, and it's kind of, it's a life-altering phone call because it's not expected, and then the next thing you know, you're cramming to learn a bunch of songs. The next day is the gig or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you couldn't have stuck a hat pin up my butt on that first gig. Because, could I say that?
You can. This is YouTube. They don't care.
Yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
To do all of that, and it was only supposed to be for 6 weeks, and at the end of it, I don't know what all was going on between Ronnie and the drummer that he had for like 11 years. But anyway, at the end of it, Ronnie offered me the gig.
Oh, that's great.
And so I took it.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
30 plus years later.
That's
amazing. What a great run.
Yeah, good Lord.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's kind of the dream gig. I mean, both of you guys have got like the gigs because it's one that lasts. It's one, you're working with a country music icon. People love these artists, and they still will go to see them, and keeps you guys busy, and that's just, it's a steady gig, man.
Yeah, and playing with somebody that was so musically diverse as Ronnie.
Yes. Well, yeah, because in the 80s, a lot of his stuff was very crossover, pop. And,
and even before he got his country deal, he had an R&B deal on Scepter Records.
Oh, man. I need to dig that out. I want to hear that. I love Ronnie Milsap.
Yeah, you get used to hearing that voice in your monitor, and you just take it for granted. And then you get away from it. It's like, oh man, I forgot how great Ronnie was.
That's
yeah,
really cool.
Trace loves Ronnie, absolutely loves him, and on and off we've been doing "Stranger in My House."
Oh man.
We do that quite often, and every time I play that song, of course Ronnie Milsap. But dude, I think of you. I think how would Rodney play this?
On the back.
And then I do the opposite.
And let me avoid all of that. That's right.
No, but seriously, it's like, because I just for the record, I absolutely love your feel. You've got a great
thank
feel,
you,
man.
Appreciate it.
And so, I always think, you've been with him 30 years. I got to get my head in Rodney Edmondson's mind right now.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
That'll drive you nuts.
Well, it's worked for you, I guess.
Yeah, the best of that very first gig that I did with Ronnie, we ran through 2 or 3 songs at sound check, and then Ronnie called Jamie over to the piano, and I thought, okay, Jamie told me from the outset, he said, look, if Ronnie doesn't dig it for whatever reason, it has nothing to do with, he says, I know what kind of player you are, but it has nothing to do with that. It's just Ronnie's not feeling something.
Right.
And he says, you'll play this weekend and I'll probably have to find somebody else.
Oh, wow.
And so Ronnie called Jamie over to the piano. I thought, well, that's that. That's the end of that. And so they're talking for a few minutes, and then Jamie stands up and says, no, Ronnie, he's white.
He thought by your feel you weren't.
It took me a second. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I thought, okay, I think that's probably okay.
For you youngsters out there that might be watching and you don't know who Ronnie Milsap is, just Google Ronnie Milsap. Number one, he's an absolute country music legend, and also he's blind. So
Rodney, you also build cases for a living.
I do.
For Spectrum Sound, correct?
Yep, and I've been doing that longer than I was with Ronnie.
So you were doing that before?
I built cases at a few other places before landing at Spectrum.
Okay.
They hired me specifically to start building cases for them over there for the sound company. And this January will be 35 years doing that
Wow.
at Spectrum.
Do you still enjoy it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So
Actually.
they like anvil type cases or the road?
Yeah, the road cases.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really been my anchor work-wise
Yeah.
in town. I mean, I did the gig with Ronnie, but when it scaled back to doing, 70 shows a year for a long time, when I got with him, we were doing 115, 120 shows a year. And I was still maintaining my job at Spectrum, but it was, man, you talk about burning the candle at both
I
ends,
can imagine.
trying to do that. But the Spectrum gig has really been a real blessing for me in
That's
this
cool.
town, and especially now with it, Ronnie's retired from the road and everything like that, and to still have that job,
great.
because I see so many people in town, they land at Lower Broad or whatever, and it's okay, but it's not sustainable.
It's not, and it burns you out really.
Oh yeah,
and
it's a grind. Man.
And if you don't have some other money stream,
Right.
with teaching or whatever, it's
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, and for those out there that think, sometimes you come to Nashville and you play for these artists, you're set. You're not. You should always, there's no shame in doing something else.
Right.
A lot of people think I can't do that because it'll tarnish my reputation
Well,
as a
and
musician.
that's another great idea for another show, is to have a couple of working musicians on that will explain, what it's like to move to Nashville, for the starry-eyed out there who,
Right.
think you're going to move here and go work with Keith Urban or whoever and be rich. It ain't always like that.
Yeah, that's the smallest percentage of what happens in this town,
Right.
really. I mean, you take the 20 or 30 guys that have that gig.
Right.
There's so many more that don't have that.
Right.
But the good news is there are those gigs, and there are ways that you can make a living playing music and
Sure.
supporting your family. So don't give up the dream, kids. Except if you want to be a recording or a mix engineer. Forget that. Just let that go.
That's right.
That's the worst idea ever. Anyways, I digress.
So Rodney, what you smoking?
I am smoking a Perdomo 30th anniversary Connecticut.
Great. Is that your favorite
That's
cigar?
my new favorite.
Awesome.
That is a good cigar, man.
What you smoking?
So today I'm smoking a New World box press Maduro, AJ Fernandez cigar. Love the AJ stuff. What about you, John?
I'm smoking the Perdomo Habano Maduro. Great cigar.
I feel like I'm cheating on Nick. Sorry, Nick. Don't worry, I'll have a Perdomo later, I promise.
Speaking of that, you built a set of cases for Nick Perdomo.
Boy, I did. That was
Because he's got this enormous drum kit in his office, right? And
Yeah.
he takes to trade shows.
Yeah, it's a Pearl Masterworks. It's a
Got his inlay in it.
yeah. It's
right?
got one drum in every size.
Oh man.
Nice.
And Raymond Massey over at Pearl called me about doing a set of cases for Nick, because he had this enormous set. He wanted it in road cases. I told Raymond, I said, why don't he just get some Humes and Berg or something, and then he can just put them on a pallet, and ship them. He said, nope, he wants the rock star treatment. I said, okay. When does he need these cases? Because it was going to be 4 enormous cases to hold this kit.
And I'm imagining there was probably cases within the cases, or is there like just...
No, it was
just-
I put in dividers.
Oh,
Each
okay.
drum had its own slot and everything like that. But Raymond, I forget the timeline he put on it. He said it was, it was like 4 weeks away. And I told Raymond, I can't do that with everything else I've got going on. And what I didn't know at the time was that Nick was standing right there with him. And Raymond put Nick on the phone. And I'm like, okay. And so Nick gets on the phone. I'd never met him before. He says, I like who I'm talking to here. He said, most times when I tell people I need something, he says, they tell me they can do it so they can get the business, but they don't produce.
Yeah.
He says, I actually don't need these till sometime in July, which was like another month away. And I said, well, I can do that. So I did those cases, and I drew out a chart for them too, so that Raymond, because Raymond's like his drum tech. Whenever Nick moves that set around, he flies Raymond in and out to set it up for him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I had to create a diagram so that they would know which drum went in which slot.
Oh, that's great.
So here at Music and Cigars with John and JR, we do a little thing called Desert Island. So imagine you get somehow stuck on a desert island. You're only going to be there for one day.
Well, that's where my career lives now.
Well, all of us. But all right, so you're stuck on this desert island for one day. You've got 3 cigars, 1 bottle. It can be bourbon, it can be water, it can be whatever you want it to be, and 1 album to listen to. Now, again, you know you're not going to die. The cruise ship has realized that you're gone, and they're going to come back and pick you up the next day. But you've got 24 hours, 3 cigars, 1 bottle, and 1 album. What would that be?
Well, I'm going to stick with Perdomo on all 3 cigars. I'd have the 30th anniversary. I'd get a Habano, Connecticut,
Okay.
and probably a 10th anniversary Connecticut.
Great sticks.
There you go.
Great sticks.
That would be my 3 cigars. I guess my overall bottle that I would take would be a Jack Daniel's single barrel.
Okay. I like it. That's good.
And for an album, I'm going to go back to one that heavily influenced me when I was in my younger days, and that's the Mahavishnu Orchestra Inner Mounting Flame.
Oh,
All right.
wow.
That was my introduction to fusion music and Billy Cobham, and
Billy
I
Cobham.
could not believe that stuff was humanly possible, and I became a huge fan.
That's awesome. Well, that brings up another question. So, who's your favorite drummer? If you had to pick one, and I know that's going to be difficult,
Oh gosh,
and you can't say John Spittle.
that thought never crossed my mind. Oh gosh, one drummer. Hey, you caught me on that one.
So when he asked me that question, I picked 2 for different
You
reasons.
actually picked 3.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
you picked 3.
I did pick 3.
So you can, it's
Well, I'm going to have to go with Cobham on one, for one of them, and I guess one of everybody's favorites is Steve Gadd.
Steve
Yes,
Gadd is a legend.
absolutely.
Man. No doubt.
I mean, those 2 guys, you can't go wrong with any of it.
Yeah. So you're heavily influenced by the whole fusion jazz rock thing?
I was
sort of?
in my younger days. I just really dove deep into that, and kind of got away from it. Of course, here there's the money's on 2 and 4.
Not a lot of
here.
jazz rock going on in
Yeah.
Nashville.
Yeah.
I mean, there's guys that play the heck out of it here, but God, I just to narrow it down to a few drummers,
Yeah.
even a handful, it's hard to do.
Yeah. You play Pearl and Zildjian, right?
Yes.
Those are your 2 staples for a long time.
Yeah.
So what series of all that do you play?
The Pearl kit that I had out with Ronnie for like the last 10 years was a Masters Birch.
Okay.
22-inch kick, 10, 12, 14, 16 toms, and a variety of different snares.
Right.
But
Right.
I did kind of settle when they came out with the solid shell series of drums. They had a solid shell walnut with maple re-rings in it that is kind of that's my go-to snare for anything now.
I don't think I've heard that one. I'll have to check it out.
It's a great drum. I've got it over at the shop if you want to come by sometime.
Yeah.
But that's a large kit, and that's to just do a gig around town. I was able to get a Pearl. They reintroduced their wood fiberglass kit a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they reproduced it, but a couple of years, and I've just got a 4-piece in that I love for using around town.
1 rack and 1 floor.
Yep, 13 and a 16.
Great. 22.
14 by 22, shallower depth.
Easier to pack up, in and out of the car. And then Zildjian, right? You've been with
Yep.
them for how many years?
I just got my 30-year certificate with them.
That's awesome. And you're also a big marching drum fan.
Well, I do I'm an alumni of the Colonial Williamsburg Fife and Drum Corps.
Okay.
And I go home once a year. In May, Williamsburg does an event called Drummer's Call, and they invite several different fife and drum corps from around the country, and it's a big weekend. And so I started attending those quite a few years ago, and so got my own, got a couple of rope drums now. And
Yeah, I've seen the one was
The
great. I
painted
saw it
one?
at your place. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. So those of you that don't know, the rope drums are are they Civil War era?
Well,
Is that when that started?
no, they in the Revolution.
In the Revolution, and it's there's no lugs on it. It's tightened by
Yeah,
the
you
ropes.
you pull leather ears down that the ropes are strung through, and you pull them down, and it tightens the ropes up, and
Right.
That's really cool.
tightens the heads up on them. And the real purists still use the calfskin heads
Wow.
and the gut snares. And mine has the gut snares, but I use plastic heads on them.
Yeah.
That is
More
very
accessible, more durable.
And yeah, not subject to humidity and things
Cool. Well, if
like
you're out on the
that.
battlefield, you need something that's resilient, I guess.
But yeah, I got into that in high school and still love to do that.
That's great.
So I got to ask you, so throughout your career, your lengthy career, is there one show that you played that, or maybe a memory that's working with a specific artist, kind of a pinch me moment?
Well, there was quite a few of those playing with Ronnie. Of course, playing with the Whites. I got to play the Grand Ole Opry for the first time. That was pretty special.
Yeah,
But,
John and I, we talked about that, and I'm jealous. I never got to do that. That was one thing I always
and
wanted to
people will ask me, well, how many times have you done the Opry? Well, the Whites, we played out there all the time.
Right.
All the time, because they did not do a lot of road dates. And I literally probably played between 400 and 500 Opry shows, with, just with them.
Yeah.
But one show that I always think about was with Ronnie, and I guess I'd been with him 2 or 3 years. And we went back to Virginia and played at the Hampton Coliseum,
Okay.
close to home, and I had a whole lot of family and friends come out, and that was kind of special because the Hampton Coliseum is where I went to see concerts all the time. I saw Led Zeppelin in there a couple of times. Saw Pink Floyd. I mean, I went to concert, everything that came through town, I went there.
And there you are on that
and
stage.
There, I got to play that stage, with Ronnie, so that was kind of special.
That's cool.
That is awesome.
Now that you're not with Ronnie anymore, because of his retirement,
Right.
you're still looking? Still open for stuff?
Yeah. I still want to get out and play some. I don't want to beat the road to death anymore, and
Sure.
I don't think there's, at my age now, that a lot of artist gigs are not going to happen for me, and that, and that's fine. That's cool. But I would like to play a little bit around town, and I'm not opposed to a road gig if it comes up. I still,
Right.
miss certain aspects of that, but yeah, I'm looking for other opportunities to play for sure.
Well, would at some point you ever be interested in doing a song with me and John?
Absolutely.
All right. We'll put John on bongos or something.
Yeah, do that.
Or we
or
could
a
do two
double drummer
drummers,
thing
yeah.
or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Do an old 38 special song or something,
That'd be great. That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome. All right.
Would love that.
Well, Rodney, thank you so much
Well,
for
thanks for
spending this
having
time
me.
with
I
us.
appreciate it.
Man, it's an honor, sincerely, to have you sitting here with us.
I enjoyed it.
It's great.
Cigars, talk, it's all
Music
great.
and cigars.
It's all great. So go out there and subscribe,
Please.
like, do all that stuff.
Share.
Rodney Edmondson, the man.
We'll see you.